Hello, Stephen Kent Mirassou here. Welcome to my office. It's comeback day today, recording this podcast slash YouTube effort on the 10th of January. In the last couple of days, we've put to bed finally the 2021 vintage of wines for the Lineage Wine Collection. And it's been a really spectacular year for fruit this year, for fermentation, with the exception of one lot, which we had a little bit of an issue with. Everything else kind of came through the winery beautifully. Beautiful fruit coming in from the Livermore Valley, from the Santa Cruz Mountains, from the Napa Valley, going through the fermentation process, going through extended maceration beautifully. Everything worked absolutely fantastically. And it's always gratifying to experience a very high quality. And I think that 2021 is going to end up being right up there with 2017 and 18 in terms of overall quality. But to have a vintage come through and meet in practically every sense the expectations you have for it is amazing and wonderful. But to have that after an absolute disaster of a vintage, which was 2020, is even more amazing. So we're looking at this as our own kind of comeback from 2020 that was the victim of fires, the victim of sort of natural conditions, agricultural conditions, just sort of getting the better of us. And this is something that as farmers and as people who are involved in agriculture as a business know all too well, that you can be the best winemaker in the world, you can have the best equipment in the world, but if you're met for days and weeks on end with apocalyptically orange skies in the middle of the day and smoke so thick that you can't literally see 4 or 5 feet in front of you, day after day after day, it is, there's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can do as a winemaker. There are things you can do after smoke taint issues, but for a small winery like ours, there really isn't any way to reclaim the wine quality. Makes it hard too when the base wines, those wines, the structure of those wines was going to be fantastic too, and it's one of those things. Thin skin grapes especially got nailed. Gilnetti Vineyard, which is our estate vineyard, one of our kind of vineyards we've been using for the last 15 plus years, not technically an estate vineyard anymore, but in the eastern foothills of Livermore. Livermore is one of those magical wine growing areas, unknown by most people, even wine lovers, even people who know wine well, don't really know Livermore Valley. Livermore is one of the oldest wine growing regions in California. It's in the eastern foothills, about an hour east of San Francisco and about an hour and 15 minutes south of Napa. We're at about 1,000 feet above sea level. So elevation does play a role in terms of ripening of fruit. And Gilnetti Vineyard is situated right in the same sort of hillside that is the Altamont Pass. Livermore is also situated east-west, one of the rare valleys in California that's east-west oriented, which means that because of the high temperatures on the other side of the Altamont Pass in Tracy and Stockton and Modesto, we get a lot of cold air from the bay being pulled in every afternoon. So the temperature differential, the diurnal temperature range, the difference between lows in the morning and highs in the daytime, are dramatic. And those temperature changes, those temperature differentials, and the cool temperatures in the evening are what allow us to maintain such great acidity in our fruit. So we get all the warmth that we can need for sugar production, which leads to alcohol, but then you get this beautiful cold air, temperature differentials of 30, 40, 50 degrees sometimes between day and night, which help to maintain malic acid and tartaric acid in your fruit. So you get a beautifully balanced fruit that gives you the full range of experience that you want your wine to have in your mouth. Napa Valley doesn't really give that to you, especially mid-valley to Calistoga in the north, the same way that we get it here in Livermore. So this is really a magical spot. And what makes 2021 gratifying from a wine standpoint is that we may have made, early days still, but we may have made the best Cabernet Franc that we've ever made. And coming on the heels of the 18 vintage, which is extraordinary in my opinion, that's saying a lot. And it's an important thing for not only our brand, the Lineage Wine Collection, and L'Autre Côte Cabernet Franc, which is our Cabernet Franc only brand. It's important for the Livermore Valley. As climate change continues to wreak havoc in some places, increasing temperatures on a consistent basis from year to year, you get to a point where there may be areas like Napa Valley 30 years from now that are too hot for the noble grapes, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot. Cabernet Franc ripens earlier than Cab. What we get from a climate change standpoint here in Livermore is we get more wind coming in earlier in the day, blowing harder. Vines don't like wind. They shut down. Where we might have gotten 8 hours of ripening effect of photosynthesis happening in any given day, it may be 6 hours now, which means that each growing day is shorter. We still need this whole range, this aggregate number of ripening hours to get fruit physiologically ripe. So if you have shorter days, you need more of those short days aggregately to get you to where you need to be from a ripening standpoint. We're already harvesting the last week of October and the first week of November for Cab. You start to get into very marginal weather when you get into November. It doesn't rain a whole lot in Livermore, but when it does, it usually starts in the beginning of November. It's cold in the morning, so you don't get much sugar production anyway, even if it's sunny. Temperatures don't get much past high 50s, low 60s in this part of the year anyway. So we are thinking it's possible and maybe even probable that we lose this window of ripening ability for Cabernet Sauvignon, but we maintain it with Cabernet Franc because of the differential in when these varieties ripen. So it becomes that much more important that Livermore Valley becomes known more and more, and that we do a great job with farming and winemaking of Cabernet Franc. And I think it will end up being the variety that really puts Livermore Valley on the map. And it differentiates us from the Napa Valley too, which is not a bad thing from both the standpoint of giving really great and interesting and different wines to consumers, but from a business standpoint as well. If you're not necessarily competing head on with the 8,000-pound gorilla, you have a potential for maybe a little bit more financial success. Apart from that, however, aesthetically, hedonistically, organoleptically, from a flavor and aroma standpoint, Cabernet Franc is the shit. I can't put it in any other more succinct terms. It is the most complex and beguiling variety out there, in my opinion. It is a grape that has a sense of adventure to it, a sense of pace to it, a sense of fruit presentation and non-fruit aromatic and flavor presentation that's very, very different than Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or Malbec or Petit Verdot, the other Bordeaux varieties. There is a challenge to winemakers too, to pick it at the right time because of its propensity to be green, to celebrate in its own way its pyrazine potential. If you pick it just right, you get that herbal quality that is more like roasted jalapeno or roasted chili. You sometimes get it in terms of bay and sage as aromatic components. You don't get it as green bell pepper or unripe vegetal fruit if you pick it at the right time. But it can be just a day or two that separates the line from picking it the wrong time and having this disastrous stewed asparagus, green pepper, and being unbelievably wow. So that's what's fun about making Cab Franc too, is that challenge of knowing your vineyard sites, picking the fruit at the right time. So we are really excited about the way 21 has wrapped up from a fermentation and barreling down standpoint. There's a lot of time left before the wines are actually in the marketplace. And we'll talk a lot more about Cab Franc because of its importance, because of it's, beautifully unknowable detail. It's bottomlessness. Is something that I write a lot about and think a lot about. So Cab Franc is the star of 2021. We've got an amazing Merlot from the Santa Cruz Mountains as well. We'll talk more about the Zayante Merlot down the road, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we stand with the 21 harvest and comebacks from disastrous years. Hats off to Clay Thompson. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Word on Word and Wines podcast and on the Stephen Kent Mirassou YouTube channel. Hope to see you for the next episode. Have a great afternoon. Cheers.